So the 2023 Rugby World Cup is all over, and sadly, so with it goes the Rugby World Cup Fantasy Team League as well. It's been a bunch of fun, but they have just released the best 15 from fantasy throughout this Rugby World Cup. So today we're going to have a look at it, and today we're going to look at who the best performers were, how our favourites were as well, and of course who we missed out on that we should have picked earlier in the season, with a bit of a look back at what the fantasy leagues were all about throughout the Rugby World Cup. A lot of fun, a bit of a blast, and of course a lot of good banter about players throughout this tournament. We found some heroes, we found some real zeros as well, but of course we had fun with it, and I think it was one of the real success stories to come out of this Rugby World Cup. So let's dig in and take a look at who the best performing 15 players, by position of course, were throughout this World Cup. So here it is. This is the best performing team throughout fantasy rugby for the Rugby World Cup. And to be fair with you, completely after we've saw the best team or the dream team of the World Cup that was decided by World Rugby, I think this is a lot more like the dream team that we should be talking about for this Rugby World Cup. This is a lot more better players who stood out and performed at a high level throughout this tournament, as well as those big tier 1 nation sides and players that also deserve the credit as well. I'll probably make maybe a couple of changes to the side. That would be about it. I think the rest of the team pretty much hits the nail on the head, and we'll talk about those as we go through them. But let's kick things off in the front row, which I think is one that they have absolutely nailed. This is perfect. I know they've done no work about this. All they've done is about hooker, highest points, Malvaka. That's the man. But let's be honest, he was, in my opinion as well, the best hooker throughout this Rugby World Cup. I would call him second to no one, but second to him, and right way around there, I'd put Malolo from Samoa. I thought he was extraordinary as well, but no question whatsoever about Malvaka being the starting hooker in my dream team, not for fantasy, but just throughout this Rugby World Cup. Alongside him is a man that just about pretty much everyone had after a round or two of fantasy, because he was just such a constant performer, and that is Mr. Gallo. The big prop for Argentina was simply outstanding and consistent throughout. What gets you in the World Rugby Dream Team? I would like to know what their criteria is, because does consistent performances and standing out in your position not fulfill that requirement to become in a dream team like that? I think Gallo was one of the best and most consistent players throughout this World Cup for a team that finished inside the top 4 and went all the way to that last day of the tournament in that third, fourth bronze playoff as well. So no questions, Malvaka or Gallo, all for this third option in the front row as well. Big Ben, Big Tummy Afuna. He was simply one of the best players at the World Cup. Multiple reasons. Performances, very strong. He carried a pretty disappointing Tongan team on his back. And I mean, he's got pretty broad shoulders as well, so he can do it. But his performances for a guy of his size and his power to play 60 plus minutes as a prop every single game for Tonga was simply extraordinarily impressive. I thought he was a quality player and a standout, most notably with the likes of maybe a Piatau, and that's probably about it that really stood out. Willie Havili for Tonga. You know, not too many players really were by and away the best players at the competition for their team, but I think being Tami Afuna was certainly one of them. But yeah, no question, scored some fantastic tries, carrying 65 defenders on his back, just trawling his way to the try line. He had a great tournament. Ben Tami Afuna, no question. My front row for dream team of the tournament, outside of fantasy, Gallo, Malvaka, Tami Afuna, 1, 2, and 3. No question about it whatsoever. Moving into the second row, and this is where World Rugby's kind of a bit delusional, but they have got Martins in here in the second row, which they did list him as a lock, but he predominantly played his games in the back row. What does that mean for us? Well, it means we don't have to pick 2 locks. We can go with, essentially 4 back rowers. So Martins, for me, player of the tournament. That's it. Player of the tournament. Consistently played at an extremely high level, dragged up a side that should be struggling alongside other players that punched far beyond their weight. Very good carrier of the ball, very good breakdown exponent, very good fitness levels, played a lot of rugby, just an all-round high-quality player. Tall, optionate lineouts, good in set piece, everything ticked the boxes here for Martins throughout this World Cup. And you know what? You say, okay, he scored well in fantasy. Oh, well, big deal. He scored, okay. It doesn't mean they're a good player. Well, hang on a minute. Why do these players get a lot of points? Why do you think they get these points? Is it because, they just did something, weirdly funny? Or no, they made tackles. They got turnovers. They got try assists. They scored tries. They actually have to perform to get these points. So throwing an argument out here saying Martins doesn't deserve to be in any sort of accolade for the end of this Rugby World Cup, it's just ludicrous based on this alone. The fact that he was one of the top performers throughout the tournament in fantasy means that he actually performed on the paddock as well, because that's how you get points in fantasy rugby. It's 1v2 there. You get the points, you're a good performer. Martins certainly was that performer. And hey, did he play harder teams? He played just as hard as anyone else, didn't he? He had to play Fiji, he had to play Wales and Australia. He really had to play a high-level game as well. So you can't say the opponents weren't there, because how many Welsh players can you see in this? How many Australians? No, that's right. 0. Performers, standouts, Martins. That's your guy. Todd Byrne comes alongside him in the second row as well. Again, it's much of a back row / second row option. Todd Byrne spent a lot of time in both of those positions. Now predominantly, of course, in that second row, but the way he plays, he's pretty much a back rower as well. Can't argue with that. Good points, but nowhere near Martins right as well. So really was a quality player in there for Ireland, but only one of 2 Irish players to make this fantasy dream team alongside the man you'll see down at the bottom we'll talk about just in a moment. But yeah, Todd Byrne, solid defender, got his points, breakdown work and defensive work. That's what he's all about. Good meter gain runner as well. Loves that hard stuff near the rucks and the breakdown. So fully worth all of his points there for the Irish. The back row, I think, is the hardest place to pick here. And there's 2 no-brainers. It's Ben Earl and Ardie Savea. Player of the Year, and I think who should have been very close in a nominee at least to being player of this tournament is Ben Earl. As far as Englishman goes, he is the only one, and I thought his combination with Courtney Laws and the way they played through that 19 rugby as well for England, he was the standout performer and a big prominent part of why they performed so well. So good in every area. Breakdowns, carries, defence, just rushing around the field. He was everywhere. He was a fart in a bottle. He was just going all places you can think of. He had a phenomenal World Cup. One of the best performing players, I think, at the tournament, and should have pushed Ardie Savea for that Player of the Year tournament, or that award throughout. I guess pre-World Cup wasn't really England's time, but throughout this tournament, they surely did step it up another gear or two. Those 2, without question, and while Martin Gonzalez really did come on late, I feel probably not the best start to his tournament for Argentina, but throughout those latter stages in the finals and games that really mattered, like versus Japan, he was exceptional. Really stood up to the plate. Again, a bit different to the other 2, although they are very strong runners. Gonzalez based his game on gain line advantages, and where others may have struggled, whereas your Marcos Kramers may have struggled in those areas, I think Martin Gonzalez was exceptionally good at just making those gain line breaks and getting over the advantage line. Again, a wee bit away, equal points with Martins. He did better than Todd Byrne, but nowhere near Savea, and just short of what Ben Earl accumulated as well. So if you're going to complain, is that a good forward pack? Would you say that's a good 8 to have for your team in the tournament forward pack? I probably couldn't argue too much with that. Maybe you'd question mark a couple of positions, but overall maybe a second row, back row, Byrne, Gonzalez, were they the best? But certainly they should be in that conversation for those positions. But the others, Gallo, Malvaka, Tamifuna, Martin, Savea, Earl, no question, best players in their positions without a doubt. Moving into the back line now, this is where things get a little bit interesting, right? Roygaard had a phenomenal game against the Minnows in his pool. He was standout, he was exceptional, he scored tries, he accumulated massive points, up to 201. Remarkably, he outscored Gallo, he outscored Tameifuna, Martins, Gonzalez, a lot of them. He really was exceptional in the few minutes that he had to play as well. But for me, I think Aaron Smith was probably the best scrum half throughout this tournament. But again, didn't get the opportunities to accumulate massive points like Roygaard did in dominating a game. So that's where the flip side of it goes. are the best players getting the most points, because you do have anomalies like this. Guys like Arundel scoring 5 tries against Chile and then scoring nothing, well, not even getting a chance against anyone else, especially in that third, fourth playoffs against Argentina, where he touched the ball about twice in the last 30 seconds before he went off the field. So it does flip side both ways, but well done, Roygaard, getting in there. For me, if I was looking team of the tournament, I'd say Aaron Smith, but Roygaard, certainly the best pick for number 9s, and especially when you can get all his points when he only played in a couple of games, so that makes it even more sweeter for the young number 9, and I think the future for the All Blacks in that number 9 jumper. Outside him, Richie Mo'unga. Surprising he got this one, to be completely honest with you. I thought Owen Farrell would have ripped this one to pieces. Maybe missing those first couple of games, but of course Owen Farrell was the leading point scorer for the tournament. So, interesting one that he fell just short of Mo'unga's 285 points in there. But still, that's a good 9-10 combination. Personally, I would have gone for team of the World Cup. I would have gone Aaron Smith alongside Owen Farrell, but still you can't complain about Roygaard's effort. And of course, Mo'unga certainly was one of the best, but I do think Errol Farrell probably did outperform him in terms of a individual aspect throughout the tournament for England. Okay, into the midfield. We'll go there first, and that's where we see our second Irishman, Bundy Aki. If you can argue with this, do it to someone else, because I'm not listening. Bundy Aki, phenomenal. Probably the standout performer in a backline, especially through the pool stages. That's a bit harsh, because I think Ireland didn't really have a post-pool stage, did they? No, just that one game in the quarterfinals. So, sorry, Bundy. That one didn't quite work out for you, did it? But still, throughout those games, he did play a phenomenal player, even against the All Blacks. Scored that try. He's slippery, he's strong, he's elusive. 316 points. He really was out and alone by himself for those midfielders. 50% more points almost than the next, who was Rieko Ioane, who, remember, only scored 1 try throughout that tournament. So scoring tries isn't the be-all and end-all for this sort of tournament or competition. It's all about accumulating those points for doing the basics. Running meters, tackles, your ruck turnovers, try assists even, things like that. And that's where Rieko Ioane cashed in as well. Good assister, and of course having Will Jordan and Mark Talia outside you, that's where you're going to accumulate your points. Just putting those guys away, letting them do the finishing touches, and making sure that they get those tries, which is where they got their points. But Bundy Aki, best midfielder by far. The outside backs, you can't complain too much about this. It'll be nice to see some minnows in action here, but the way that Mark Talia broke tackles and eluded defenders, easily put him up there as well. Grab tries for fun. Also, Will Jordan, the flip side, not so much an elusive, slippery customer, but just an out-and-out finisher. He's the guy that if you put him in space, he's going to burn everyone and score tries. And he did it a number of times. Just put him in the space, draw the last defender, give it to Jordan. No one is catching him. Equal highest try scorer for a Rugby World Cup campaign from Will Jordan. If that's not enough to count you out as the best, or one of the best, in a fantasy team, I don't know what is. Mark Talia, though, second behind him. And of course, you can't go past Damien Penaud, who again for France, throughout the group stage, into that quarterfinal, was phenomenal. The French team loved to attack, and he certainly relished playing in the end of that back line. He really was a standout player for the French team as well. Overall, though, if you look at the side, it's strong, it's powerful, it's fast, it's electric, and it does everything you really need for a big fantasy side. They accumulate a lot of points, and they look fun, they look exciting, and they look ready to go as well. So what are your thoughts? Who did you miss out on picking throughout the season as well? Who were your guys that you didn't quite think had the next level to step it up, and you didn't put them in your fantasy side? Most people would have gone with Aki, especially after that first round. I think Talia was a popular pick, as was Jordan and Penaud. Really, it's probably guys like Martins, people picked up on late. Tami Funa certainly was one that come along later on the tournament. But if you pick these guys nice and early, you certainly would have been in for a good shout throughout this tournament. But they are your best performers. Who are some unlucky ones to miss out? Let me know in the comment section below. Of course, a lot from the minnows as well, grabbing a lot of big points throughout matches as well. But that is it. That is your leading 15 throughout the Rugby World Cup in the Fantasy League. How did you get on with your Fantasy League as well? For the channel, we had a league of about 45 odd people joining us as well to compete for the big prize here on the channel, but we have a top 3 of very, very, very capable pickers as well. It was Mr. DJ Big Cock who rounds it out at the top with number 1, 5,759 points. It was very close here, though we do have a good lead there over Khaleesi Brew, who come in at number 3. And of course, Mr. Jan van der Steep, He was, of course, our hero throughout the tournament, giving us the big picks for guys like Nicholas Martins and that from the Minnows, keeping the points flowing for us throughout the tournament here on our streams and, of course, in the videos and on Discord. He was the tipster for sure for our tournament. Personally, myself, I finished down here in 16th position, down on 4,789. You know, pretty much near on 1,000 points behind the number one taker there in the league. But overall, pretty happy with how I went. It was a fun league for sure to be in, and I thank you all for your contributions and debates and conversations about the league this year. It really was a fun World Cup Fantasy League. And that pretty much does wrap me up for a look back at Fantasy Rugby at the Rugby World Cup 2023. I hope you enjoyed being part of it. I hope you enjoyed all the twists and turns, the ups and downs, the roller coasters of the league. It's been a great fun. It's been a great conversation maker. And of course, if you want to progress with it, we are already running a URC and a Premiership Fantasy Team League in Super Brew as well. So if you want to get involved in that, there'll be links in the description. If you have any others that are fun you want to join into, make sure to let us know on Discord as well, and we can make those happen. We are running an NBA League as well, as that just kicked off in the last week or so. So if you want to get involved in that, join the Discord and we will give you all the information you need and find it in the description down below. Thanks everyone for coming by and hanging out. I hope you enjoyed the Rugby World Cup and of course the Fantasy League as well. I'll see you all for plenty more in the future. But of course, if you want to be a bit more involved, get on the Discord channel, join everyone in the conversation there. We've got heaps going on in there as well, so you all have something to get involved in. So I'll see you there or in the next video. Until then though, thanks for watching and take care.